Momo is stronger than Kaido, and here's why. You see, at the beginning of this week's chapter 1039, we see Kaido's flame clouds being pulled by Momo. Kaido lifted Onigashima out of the ocean and attempted to drop it over the flower capital in order to cause it to replace the flower capital as new Onigashima, taking over Wano. Now, we see that Momo is actually able to hold on to these and pull the island in the opposite direction than Kaido was intending. Momo would not be able to do this unless he was able to overcome all of the force which Kaido was putting into moving the island. Right there, that is conclusive proof that Kaido is indeed weaker than Momo. He's being overpowered by the newly matured 8-year-old, so that's the only reasonable conclusion. What's going, guys? Sam6 and here throwing at you this week's One Piece chapter review. So today, let's get right into it. First page of the chapter is Momo pulling Onigashima away, proving he is indeed stronger than Kaido. That's something we had to get out of the way immediately, extremely important. And while he's doing so, even in his distracted state, hearing voices in his head, Kaido isn't doing anything important at all right now, but Momo has to put up with a strange calling voice he can hear while trying to overpower the force Onigashima is currently moving with. Quite the feat if I do say so myself. You see, the natural assumption would be that it's perhaps Zunisha, calling back to what happened during Zou. But I think what's really going on is that he's hearing the voice of Odin speaking to him. You see, his PTSD is being triggered by adopting a dragon form. That's what's really going on here. Oh, I feel so bad for Momo. I hope he's able to overcome this as time goes by. And moving on from that tragic story of the powerful man who's currently fighting to save the lives of all of the citizens of Wano in the flower capital and all the people fighting on Onigashima, we turn to the dome interior on the live floor. Okay, this is where we have Kid and Law fighting against Big Mom. At the end of the last chapter, they were able to knock her back with some added awakening attacks. Actually no, I do not believe Kid has been using his awakening again. He hasn't assigned anything. He was using the Konagio. I would be shouting right now, but speaking too fast and my throat and mouth both feel weird. Sorry about that. Big Mom has just been knocked down and she has taken a decent amount of damage at this point. All of the spectators are cheering, fearing she's been defeated, but she coughs up. We can tell Big Mom's still alright, and Kid starts taunting her. Meanwhile, Law is quite upset. You see, they had this strategy going and they'd been formulating plans. However, Kid messed up on one vital point. The entire intention behind all of this was for Law to do all of the carry jobs, put Kid on his back and do all the work, but Kid keeps coming in at the end with his measly and worthless attacks, dealing next to no damage. Shame on you, Kid. What if Big Mom stands up because you did negative damage with that stupid Dio attack? When has anything named Dio ever been useful? For shame. Moving on from their squabbling, and I understand completely where Law's coming from, Big Mom gets up and she seems quite wounded now. This is the most hurt we've ever seen any Yonkou. Whitebeard flashbacks, whoops. And she seems to have a broken arm. She says her ribs are as well, and at this point she rips out some of her soul to allow herself to recover. There's a panel where we can see the Conqueror's lightning as she's invigorated, and we hear the "Yes Mama" chants. It's difficult to tell if that's her shouting out. Actually no, now that I look at this for the fourth time, she's just giving her mama ha 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 laugh. I'd get into that, but I do not want to arouse the suspicion of my household and neighbors when I'm making those strange voices during the daytime. So she's doing that, and I think now she has turned her bones into homies and just stuck them back together. You see, all these One Piece villains always have some strange ways of stitching themselves up and recuperating. Everything from Dofi sewing himself back up to Kaido getting drunk. Oh, I suspect you have something going on here. Oh, and Luffy with the milk as well. I should add all these things into One Piece D&D as ways to heal. Well, moving on, beyond that, you know, Law does try to get more serious and move on to the next phase of the plan, where he tells Kid explicitly that he gets the final hit. But Kid is not willing to cooperate and does not want to receive orders from Law. I mean, Kid, come on. Law's doing the real work here, and that's even what Big Mom has stated. Because she does say those shockwaves that hit her dealt extreme damage. She may be an iron balloon, but inside a balloon it's still always air. She says Law's techniques are dangerous, and she attributes most of the damage she's taken to him. So, this is fair. Kid may be capable of dealing high damage attacks, but the nature of them, you know, is something she's resistant to because of her high endurance and durability, as I've just said. So internal damage, that is the way. It's like, okay, no, enough D&D references for today. I'm moving on. So we get the next in the Big Mom series of Mazer attacks. Last time was the Mazer Cannon, I believe, which she used against Ulti when she had struck, I know your name, not Komachio, that was, or Kuma, you know, those are the animals. Kibi? No, those are the Dango. No. The little girl, yes. When Ulti struck the little girl whose name I cannot remember right now. Come on, I can do this. No, I can't. So, moving on, she uses Mazer Saber and cuts the bull straight in half, and when I see this happen, I think, hey, if the metal's cut apart, Kid, your fruit's magnetism, you can just stick that back together, right? Or does the heat mess with the arrangement of electrons and ruin whether it and destabilize the magnet? No, I don't think Oda is going that deep into it. He'll probably stick them back together, who knows? But he calls it nothing but useless scrap, and Big Mom gets quite heated here. So Hair Flaming, Napoleon, Hera, and Prometheus all still working together after she uses the Mazer Saber. She gets ready to go all out against them. Kid brings the bull back at her, aiming to attack as he's going in straight at her Mazer Saber, and Big Mom talks about how the seas have belonged to them for decades, since the infancy of the current supernovas. Kid, however, takes this chance, and instead of using the bull, which must have been coming in as a mere distraction at first, he uses the assign, gives her a south pole, gives a north pole to the wall, and makes them stick together. So he gets her attached to a very large building, which is meant to tether her to one position so she's unable to dodge the attack. And at this point, when the remainder of the Cornadillo, I've just been saying this, I didn't even go back and check last week's chapter, I could be completely wrong about the name. When the Cornadillo is flying straight at her, you know, because she is a magnet, it is metal, and he's propelling it, that's probably going to smart quite a lot. It's a very large attack. Even if she doesn't take much physical damage, the bludgeoning power, like from the pressure which would be exerted on her, would still do something. So we noticed that inside the Cornadillo are Big Mom's homies, the steel beams which she had taken command of. I guess that didn't mean very much, because if they're still metal, they are still going to be magnetized. I mean, even she's being affected by Kid's fruit. And one of the homies says, "Mama, dodge!" And she says, "I can't get loose!" So instead, since she cannot free herself from the building, she instead tenses all her muscles up, makes an athletics check, uses the max strength boon, and lifts the building up Instead, she tears it from the ground, spins and puts it behind her, using it as a shield to deflect the Cornadillo, and the building is shattered. This both removes the obstacle that had been binding her in one place, obstacle was the wrong word there, and stops the attack right in its tracks. So upset, she now uses a special technique we're seeing for the first time. Mother's homing cannon, Misery. So Misery is a reference to the anime 3000 Leagues in Search of Mother. This is... oh, the translator's note says it's 1976. I thought I was the only one who knew how old it was. Well, did you know it had a movie which came out from the condensed anime episodes in 1980? This was actually a very popular anime internationally and featured a child who was in search of his mother, had 52 episodes, and he was quite the persistent boy. After he stopped receiving messages from her, after she showed signs of illness, she lived in a faraway country. He set out on a quest to go and find her, fearing for the worst. Thank you, Wikipedia. So, the whole idea behind this attack is that Misery is not going to be stopped by anything and will persist until she achieves her goal, which fits in well with the name homing cannon. So it's a homing attack, and this is actually brought up in the next panel when some of the scrubs are like, "What? It's moving! Her attack! It's alive!" So, as Kid tries to create space between himself and Big Mom by fleeing away, Misery starts rampaging, tearing straight at him and getting rid of all the bystanders in the way. So while Big Mom cheers Misery on, Law tells her to eat this. Oh, wait. What do you mean? Oh, okay. So I've just received word, that was not the speech bubble. I was remembering that wrong. It was just eat from the tattoos he has on his fingers on his left hand, which spell out death. There's no way Odo did this by mistake. So he uses tact and he causes a structure which seems comparable in size to Big Mom. The following panels make it seem even bigger than it is initially, and this crashes down into her and causes her to lose her footing. The surprise brings her to the ground. She is quite worn out at this point, and that is a substantial amount of weight which comes crashing down on her. That building was several stories tall and quite wide if it could encompass her giant body. So after he causes her to crash down to the ground at this point, following Kid's distractions, Law finds himself the opening and he uses his K-room again. At this point, we get a panel here which I'm only noticing now for the first time. I should have paid better attention. Oda really did set this up well. You don't catch things unless you're really vigilant here. Between him using K-Room and trying to stab down at Big Mom, there's a panel here of Law with bolts flying in the air around him. This shows that they are loading something up and have coordinated themselves. There are bolts running about, which gives the idea that he is currently forming a weapon of sorts, which, well, not necessarily a weapon. I know it's a weapon because I've read the chapter, but he's forming some sort of contraption. Actually, no, it's Kid. It's always a weapon. So Law is able to stab down his blade. Kikoku, I think. No, that's wrong. That's just Black Blade. I'm not going to remember this. Will I? Is it? No, it's not. It's not Kikoku, is it? No. Kikoku I'm pretty sure that's just Black Blade. Oh well, so he stabs it down into her using K-Room and his awakening, and Big Mom's upset. From the drawing in her eyes and the trickle of sweat, you can tell that she is startled and slightly afraid, worrying for what this attack will do to her, because she knows it does deal damage and it is worrying, not something she can ignore. But she's mad and she proceeds to attack him. Before that, though, we get a few glimpses in between. The sword pierces all the way through the basement where Yamato is currently engaging the Kazenbo, and we can see that she has frozen many of the weapons. I'm going with she because that's what Oda listed her as in the data book, was it? I think it was a data book. Contrary to how he'd listed down, for example, who was that? I know your name. I don't know your name. Izo's sibling. You see, yeah, I'm going by those differences there. Yamato has frozen all of the gunpowder, the weapons here, to prevent Kazenbo from igniting them directly, and she gets distracted by seeing this strange thing pierce into the ground around her. And in the next panel, we see Onigashima in the skies above Wano, and the blade pierces all the way through Big Mom and pins her and Onigashima into the very ground itself. Maybe what Momo was hearing was truly the voice of all things. You see, I underestimated him. He might have gone beyond PTSD and have seen this coming. Future sight, voice of all things, I think so. He predicted the future and wondered whose voice was calling out to him. But it was the earth itself, fearing the scale of Law's attack. Oda, I have to give you props for this one. You're quite the mastermind, I must say. So going on from this, we cut back to where Law is and where he'd sunk the blade in from, and Big Mom is letting loose a flurry of attacks on him. She can't get a good angle, so don't think that it's unreasonable Big Mom isn't destroying him in one hit. The supernovas have proven themselves fairly sturdy at this point, but she lets loose a flurry of blows, striking him with fists full of haki. Her angle is bad, lying on her back, just beating her chest. She also can't go too hard on him for fear of striking herself with her attack. So Law just puts up with this. He perseveres, and we can see his eyes whiting out and his teeth gritting as he continues to sink the blade deeper and deeper into the earth. She wonders if he's dead for how unresponsive he is. For how unresponsive he is in the middle of all his focus. And Law's crew, the Heart Pirates, actually worry for him at this point. We see his death tattoos again on his fingers. This time, do they mean anything? Nah, those are just his fingers. Okay, so the Heart Pirates worry for him because he's just standing there on Big Mom taking all of her attacks. But then it's about time. He says puncture and gets his attack ready. He feels like the blade has sunk deep enough. And Big Mom, I don't think this has happened before, but she begs. This is the first time we see Yonkou begging, which makes the themes of this chapter all the more important. The cover of this week's Shonen Jump had written, the end, was it the end of an era or change of an era? Either way, that's the theme of this chapter, and this arc in general, that transition between the old generation and new generation, and this is the first time members of the new generation seem to cause direct fear in the hearts of the Yonkou and the members of the older generation, as she says, "No, don't," and he finishes exclaiming his attack. We see that the blade through Onigashima and even down into Wano create a massive crater from the damage. I don't know if it's a vibrating attack, a spinning attack, a rotation attack. I'm not exactly sure because it's manga, but from the lines drawn and the way it's paneled in the manga, I think it's a vibration technique. Yeah, and that causes the crater in the ground. Mama's eyes white out, she coughs up blood, and she rolls over on top of the crater which was formed by the blade just beneath her. So first we see Momo wondering how the crater got there. You see, he's not sure that he hasn't yet understood that he's as powerful as he now is. He doesn't know he has the voice of all things and future side haki yet. And we cut next to Yamato, who's looking at the giant hole which is formed both above and below her. So here I think this gives the chance for something interesting. If the problem with Wano falling to the ground wherever it was the weapons from the armory in the basement, and she had frozen them. We thought, okay, that would make things better when they landed, but with Kazenmo around, that makes things difficult. So, what if she just chucks the frozen weapons, which will not ignite, outside of the hole, like outside of Onigashima, into the hole, and they crash to the ground like that? It would make it so that when Onigashima does eventually hit the ground, now that Momo's overwhelming power has single-handedly dragged it back away from the flower capital, like because of that, when it does inevitably hit the ground, we wouldn't have to worry about the explosion. Unless he gets it to the ocean, which I don't think is likely because Momo wants everyone else to feel like their jobs are special. So while writhing in pain, Big Mom tries to attack Law and finish him, and she seeks misery on him. Misery is unrelenting, as the reference in her name would imply, but this is all for naught as Law cues Kid, and we see Kid holding a very large gun. That thing looks like a Buster rifle, and if Big Mom ain't going down after this, we gonna have something to discuss here. 'Cause the Buster rifle beats anything. Well, I mean, there's a double-barrel Buster rifle, but the Buster rifle beats anything. You don't whip out something like this, especially after Law's attack, and expect me to believe she ain't going down. You see, nah, it just doesn't make sense. I mean, of course, Big Mom is durable, and she's one of the Yonkou. I'm not saying that she should be inferior to these young whippersnappers, but for one thing, jokes aside for a moment, I do have to commend Oda for the way he has executed this fight. Its choreography, its writing, all of the art and the scenes he set, the moves he's introduced. I think he's done a beautiful job of leading us to believe that Law and Kid are truly capable of bringing Big Mom down, because when this fight was first, when the stage was first set for this fight, we all found it extremely unlikely. But through the slow introduction of buffs and boons and all of those assorted boosts which he's been giving them, as well as their heart, actually, and that is something which is important for the function of Haki, which whether or not we see the Black Blades, Haki is always at work, yeah. So all of that has slowly allowed them to rise to the point when they can challenge and even bring her down, and I think the way he's done it, making it believable without leaving me with unreasonable doubts, is quite commendable. So back to the Buster rifle, man. Kid's telling Law not to tell him what to do because, it's obvious. If you got a Buster rifle in your hand, you won't fire that thing fast. And that's exactly what he does. So we go back to Big Mom sweating. We see the focus in Kid's eyes as he aims the thing, and we see the smile on Law's face as he's on the ground. So Law just ignores the fact that Misery is about to attack him, because on the next page we see Big Mom's last stand. She says, "You brats!" and we can see her face tense up in more sweat. She's nervous about this one, but then she goes on to say, "You think you can take me down? Give it your best shot." Okay, that's more old country lady who has a farm which has kids trespassing on it than Emperor of the Sea, but I'll take it. So she declares she is Big Mom, and Kid, with a classic protagonist quip, says, "That's why I'm going to finish you off." So he uses his technique, fires off the Buster rifle at her, and this thing blasts her into the ground. I think this counts as part of his awakening, because we can see from the kanji that it means electromagnetic cannon. That's what he's firing off, and the kanji is similar to that of a railgun, except the projectile, because this is just energy being fired off. And his simple ability of being able to control attract magnetic materials without the use of his awakening means he wouldn't have been able to do this without him. I think he uses the assign feature of his awakening or something along those lines to mess with the electric fields, which causes that. I'm not going to pretend I know science or assume that Oda was intending to use science instead of anime science, but he's probably using electromagnetic fields to rile up those electrons there and fire off that super beam. This is the first attack he's gotten off that I am convinced is actually doing something to her, because she coughs up the blood, she screams in pain, which is not something emperors do very often, and she crashes toward the ground. Looking at this panel again, she might be falling out of Law's hole because she was beside it. So she could go blasting off again and fall down toward Wano like King and Queen did, which could add some extra damage from the crash. But yeah, this attack lands, and because it isn't his usual bludgeoning or piercing or slashing damage from his blunt weapon attacks, it's more effective against her. And Law gets in the final line of the chapter and he tells her, "Your era is over." So, dragging emperors off their thrones, and there is no break next week. When we get 2 banger chapters in a row and then Oda tells us there's no break, what can I do except fear? You see, it means he's gonna give us an even better one next week, and the cliffhanger is going to be brutal. Oh, Oda, how you toy with us so, but this man is a brilliant genius. So that's gonna be it for the chapter review. My overall thoughts, I've given them and laid them on the line. It was a very good chapter. I quite enjoyed it this week. I reiterate, that's not something I expected to be saying about Kid and Law versus Big Mom, especially after how it started, but I guess the introduction of Awakenings did a lot, though they said they wouldn't be able to use it very much, and they ended up using their Awakenings the rest of the fight, so that's something which we'll need to talk about, but it's alright. Now that I'm through with the chapter, it's time for the announcements I said I would be making. I hope you're ready to hear all of this. As any of you who follow me on Twitter would know, although some of the tweets have probably been deleted by now, I've been working on One Piece D&D for over a year now. It was of course inspired by Rustage's One Piece D&D, and after I saw that I thought it'd be fun, and it all started out as something I wanted to make so I could play with my friends. It ended up being a fairly large undertaking for me to completely rewrite the rules of 5th edition into a new game guide and ability system involving stamina and all that stuff, which I have now compiled all together. So that's something. I plan on making all of these resources available through Patreon at some point, but all of that One Piece D&D specific stuff we can get into on another day, because I have a video series planned which I've already started scripting, which will be introducing it to all of you guys. So for now, I'm going to call it the Sailor's Guide to Everything, but I'm probably going to change that because one of my friends disagreed with the name, and he's probably right. I don't have the best naming sense. I also plan on starting another series, weekly videos. Oh, I've claimed that many times. I want to get Manga Mondays going, where I talk about a different manga every Monday. Pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, and the first thing I have planned is I want to make a video on Act Age as part of another series, the Untold Sagas, which will be focusing on manga which were never completed. So drop down in the comments if you have any which you'd like me to talk about. I already have Vagabond, of Berserk lined up. Maybe I'll even throw in the Hunter x Hunter if I feel like making more fun of Tagashi. But beyond that, which I've been putting off for a long time, I have a One Piece D&D one-shot planned, and this is actually going to involve a very sizable cast of people who some of you may or may not know. As it stands right now, and I'm putting this out into the world so they feel bad if they change their minds, sorry guys, but Megumi Kuragiri, a VTuber who's debuting tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific time on Twitch, is going to be one of my players. Another player is going to be Sensei. Many of you should know him because he's in the One Piece community. The third person is going to be hiding in public. Another member, he's an anime YouTuber, some of you may or may not know. His videos aren't uploaded as frequently as Sensei's are, but he streams on Twitch fairly frequently, and right now is doing a lot of Pokemon Arceus content, you know, the usual. And the fourth player in my One Piece D&D one-shot, date to be announced, is going to be Jeff Thu from Mother's Basement. I'm really excited to work with all of these guys, and if all goes well, within the next few weeks you'll have a date for when we're going to do this, and I must say I'm extremely excited. I'm at a loss for words, really. I'm just looking forward to all of this coming. So if you want to know more about this, follow me on Twitter, subscribe here on YouTube, and hit that notification bell to be up to date with all of my future content and everything I try to tell you guys. But for today, that's going to be it. Thanks for watching the chapter review of chapter 1093. I didn't actually check the name. Let me do that now. Scroll to the top. One Piece chapter 1039, the main attraction. That's going to be the end of this week's chapter review. Thanks for watching, guys. This has been Samuel607, logging out.